Hi there. In this video I'll be showing you how to make black powder similar to how they make it commercially. Commercial black powder is granulated by a method called corning, which is a method that I'll be showing you in this video. Commercial black powder is granulated by taking black powder and compressing it into a puck, either crushing it wet or dry, and then tumbling it in order to polish it. Normal fireworks black powder, however, is simply made by running the dampened composition through a screen, which produces granules, which you can see here. But corning produces granules that look like this. In order to make corned black powder, you will need the following: black powder, a mold of some sort. Here I just machined these out of aluminium. It's a cylinder that fits into this ring, and then it has a little base that it slots onto so it doesn't move, and then that slides in there. But what I used previously was simply a piece of wood that I used a hole cutter like this to cut out a hole, and I used the piece of wood that the hole was cut into as the mold, but over time they wear out and break, as you can see this one has. So for this video I went and made a more permanent solution. And then you will also need a ball mill for making the black powder and also for polishing the black powder itself. For those that do not know how a black powder is made, it is a mixture of 75% potassium nitrate, 15% charcoal, in this case I'm using willow charcoal that I made myself, and 10% sulfur. In addition to that, you will use 2% dextrin, which is pretty much just baked corn flour. It is then ball milled for several hours. It's disputed on what media to use, but the safest to use is ceramics, but here I have steel balls, as they were what I was able to get. It is also widely advised against to use glass marbles, as they are capable of fracturing, and in doing so may cause sparks or heat that may set fire to your mixture during ball milling, which will lead to an explosion. The first step you'll want to do is to make sure that your black powder is nicely moistened. The way you do that is you take 2 credit cards, you lay your powder out onto a plastic baking tray, or just a plastic tray, and you try to spread it out relatively evenly. And it actually helps if you have these ridges, which are from you moving the card along. It also helps get the water in more evenly. So you'll take some water. I've just got a spray bottle here. Normally people would have a spray bottle, but I do not have one handy, so I'm just using this. And then you simply massage the liquid into the powder. I do this by simply taking the powder, scooping it into the middle, and then chopping it. By doing this, you are massaging the water into the powder. You'll have wanted to add enough moisture to be able to compress it into a solid lump that can break, but it does not crumble just on its own. Now that your black powder is ready, you'll want to load it into your mold. Now if you're using a piece of wood, like I used to use here, got to make sure you have a bottom plate, your mold, and then your piston goes on top, so everything is being compressed. So I'll just be using the one I made, and you'll want to fill it right to the top, and then you'll need to compress it. You can do this by using a vise or using a hydraulic press, which I just happen to have. For the purpose of this video, I'll just be using my vise. So you want to take your mold, put it in the vise, try to make sure that it is centered with the points of pressure, and then you want to compress it as much as you can. The next step is to get your now formed puck of black powder out. So what I tend to do is I just take my vise, use the small piston as a guide, so I know that the puck will then fall out between that gap, and then I just hit it out. And there you have a really nice, very rigid piece of black powder. Now you want to do this for the rest of your powder, and then we'll continue to the next step. Once you've now got all your black powder compressed into pucks, as you can see here, this is just 100 grams of black powder, and it's been reduced to so little. What you want to do is you want to take a small hammer, and then just with the edge of the hammer you want to smash it into pieces. You want to focus on all of the bigger pieces so that you can smash all of them down relatively evenly. To help separate the bigger chunks and make them easier to crush, you can just shake the pan until they rise to the top and then shift them out to the middle. You can focus on lightly smashing those. Once you are done, you should be left with this and some other slightly finer material. You can then do this for the rest of your pucks, and then we can move on to the next step. Now that you've got all of your pucks reduced into granules, you'll want to sift out all the really fine powder. This can be done simply by using a fly screen or a car window shade cloth, whatever. It's a very fine mesh, but it's not super fine. So you take your mesh, piece of paper, and you simply filter it through until you can see nothing is coming through anymore. Now that you've got your granules separated from your fine powder, which is now sitting there, you'll want to put it all into your ball mill drum. And then you want to add in some pencil graphite. I've just got a pencil here and I've shaved down to about 1 centimeter's worth. And you want to shave all of that graphite into your powder, and this will allow you to be able to polish it and give it a nice surface shine. One note is you want to make sure that all of the graphite is a fine powder so that it can coat all of these surfaces instead of just being chunked. Now that you've got your chunks in your tumbler jar, you have to make sure that you don't have your media in there, otherwise you'll grind it down to a powder. So you then put your lid on, you close it, and then you put it in your ball mill at an angle so that all the powder is with itself instead of just being spread out over the bottom. Now that you've got your ball mill loaded, you put the drum in, and then you make sure you've got something that is propping it up so that it is sitting at an angle. And then you switch it on, and then you let it run until it is polished. I'll let you know how long that takes. Okay, I have let it tumble for about 5 or 6 hours now, and it has got a slightly glossy, polished look to it, you can see here. And now what you want to do is the last step, which is just sifting out the different size chunks, because you obviously can't get them all in the same size. So I've just got a kitchen sieve here. It's one of the finer mesh versions. Then once I'm done with this, I'll move on to a coarser mesh, which will allow the bigger particles, and then everything else will be generally too large for normal pyrotechnic use, but can probably be used for lift. Okay, so they are now all sifted apart. The majority of the powder is the coarse material, and then the smallest amount is the medium material, and then got a little bit more of the slightly finer grains. These large granules can be used in large shells probably, or used for firing cannons. Medium ones used for pistols, cannons and such. The last step would be to simply put each thing in a tray of its own, and then put them out in the sun to dry, and then it should be quite ready to use.